Hello and welcome to another Gospel Project video. This week our story is from the second half of Acts chapter 11. So we are now in the story of Acts. We have had the persecution and killing of Stephen. We've had the conversion of Saul, and shortly after that he kind of goes off on his own, away from the rest of the disciples to kind of learn more and just kind of be away for a little while, I guess. But because of that persecution of Stephen, that really kind of scattered a lot of the disciples out into a bunch of different places where they hadn't been before. And what was kind of the standard practice for those disciples as they would go is they would go to places and then they would preach the gospel almost exclusively to Jews. They would go to the synagogue, which had kind of been Jesus' pattern, and they would preach the gospel there to Jews only. In one place, however, in a town called Antioch, the disciples who ended up there actually decided to go to the Greek-speaking Gentile peoples as well and preach the gospel there, and they find a fruitful harvest. They see a lot of people are hearing the gospel, are receiving it, or turning to the Lord. And this news goes all the way back to Jerusalem and to the main group of disciples, and they decide to send Barnabas to Antioch to kind of see what's going on there. And he shows up in Antioch and sees what's happening, and it's like, this is really awesome. And he starts to do ministry there, and he starts to preach the gospel there as well. He even goes off and finds Paul from where he was and brings him to Antioch, and for a quite considerable amount of time they spend time together in Antioch preaching the gospel to that group of believers there. It's actually in Antioch is the first place where people who are following Jesus are called Christians. So that is one of Antioch's kind of claims to fame as far as the early church goes. And then the passage ends with this prophet named Agabus who says that, hey, there's going to be a big famine that's going to kind of come into this part of the world. And so in Antioch, they decide to kind of take up some offering and some collection to send back to Judea to provide for the believers there who are about to experience some hardship due to this famine. So the thing we're going to focus on today is kind of a continuation of last week. Last week with Peter and Cornelius, we learned that God's mission is to send us everywhere to everyone with the gospel. Similarly, as we're going everywhere and to everyone with the gospel, God also wants us to be intentional and concerned about meeting both the spiritual needs and the material needs of people in the places where we're ministering, of the church where we're residing. And so that kind of goes both for the believers and for the non-believers. And so kind of that big idea is the church, the followers of Jesus, should be concerned with meeting people's spiritual needs, introducing them to Jesus, and when able, meeting the physical and material needs of people, whether that's financial, whether it's food, whether it's helping pay for things or whatever it is. That was kind of that early model in the church, was we're going to meet each other's spiritual needs and meet each other's material and physical needs. So that was what we were going to focus on with your kids today. That was the big idea, is that God wants us to meet the spiritual and physical needs of each other. And so I would encourage you this week to talk about ways in which you can do that, whether it's within our own congregation of how can we be, as a family, praying for other people in our church, or hey, this family has this need and this family has this need. What can we do to help with that? But then also to look at it similarly with the non-believers in your life, and how can we meet their spiritual needs and introduce them to Jesus, and how can we, meet their physical needs, and by meeting those physical needs, can that help us meet the spiritual needs? Oftentimes, with non-believers, a way to meet their spiritual needs is to first take care of a physical need. But I encourage you to have those conversations this week and be thinking about how you can minister in your own, with your family, in your community, in that kind of a way, especially as we're getting close to Easter. Be a great time to kind of think about how to combine that season of time with, the Easter season, with how you can meet the spiritual and physical needs of the people around you. But until I get to see you again, either in person or in the next video, God bless.